Hello there, and welcome to today's webcast, 5 Ways a Modern IT Service Desk Boosts Efficiency. I'm Barry Condry, Senior Fellow at the Center for Digital Government, and I'm excited to serve as the host for today's webcast. Thanks for joining us. We're going to have a great session over the next hour. We have a few housekeeping notes for you on the screen. We will email a recording of this presentation to all registrants within 48 hours. Please use the recording for your reference, or feel free to pass it along to colleagues using the Share widget in the console menu. You can also participate in question and answer with us by submitting your questions using the Q&A box. Please make sure you have your questions ready for this amazing panel. Send in your questions as they come up throughout the presentation, and we'll address as many of them as possible. Joining me today to discuss this topic are Andrew Graff, Chief Product Officer with Team Dynamics, and Mark Thomas, Chief Information Officer with the City of San Joaquin, California. Andrew, can you please take a few moments and introduce yourself and tell us about your background?
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Barry, for helping us with this today. So Andrew Graff, I lead product here at Team Dynamics, and I've been in the service management space for several decades. So I'm always very excited to work with practitioners, learn from them. And I think we're in a really, really exciting period of time for those of us who've dreamt of somebody pushing the boundaries of service management. So glad to be here.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Mark, can you please take a few moments and introduce yourself and tell us about your background?
Sure. Yeah, Mark Thomas. I'm the CIO for San Joaquin County. So we're in California. We're just south of Sacramento, or Sacramento County. To give you some sense of size and scope, San Joaquin County has a million residents, and the county government is 10,000 employees, or 10,000 workers, divided amongst 25 different departments. So just like cities and states, you can think of counties as essentially medium-sized conglomerates, okay? And I've worked for the county for 7 years now, been in the current role for 4 years. Prior to that, most of my career was in healthcare IT.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate the background. Andrew, we'll turn it over to you to get us started.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. So I'm really excited that Mark's here with us. We'll be talking about how organizations are modernizing service practices, right? I think, as all of us know, the demands of IT have increased dramatically over the past 5-6 years, and it's only increasing in velocity, but the amount of resources we have access to and hiring has not increased in a commensurate way. So we're seeing customers all over in many, many industries look at how they can use technology to provide better service, but at the same time reduce the burden on their team members. And so I think, when you think about your organization, and as leading product, I spend lots of time with customers, and what we find is that these technologies around service management and automation and AI, what they really do is they help synchronize the organization, right? It helps all the parts work efficiently and effectively, and allows the tools that are best and the resources that are best to do the job to do them. So where a person is the best resource for the job, it allows people to focus more on doing those jobs and not the jobs that an AI or automation capability is better at. And so that, as we think about the world, we're constantly trying to adjust the product roadmap, et cetera, to allow customers to take advantage of the capabilities that are available to us to help modernize and synchronize that service management capability. So one thing that we're going to do throughout to help Mark and I guide the conversation a little bit is we're going to have some participation. So we're going to have audience polls. And so the first question is around your level of maturity. So we're trying to get a gauge on where you are on a scale, and foundational, mature, advanced. And don't think too much about it. Read the bullet points, take your best guess, but this will help us. This will help us understand sort of where you are on that continuum. And I'm expecting we're going to have a mix out there. And what's interesting as well is I think a lot of times we find that people think not being advanced is not good. That's not the case at all. In many cases, depending on the size and needs of your organization, foundational might be optimal, right? That might be the best use of resources because investing more to become mature or advanced wouldn't be worth the cost and the resource expenditure. So it looks like we have some people here participating. And so, Mark, do you have any estimates? Where do you think, what do you think the largest cohort will be here?
Oh, I would say I think most people are going to be in the foundational. I mean, that's certainly where we were. I would say, 3 years ago before we started our journey with Team Dynamics.
Well, let's see here. The largest cohort was mature. So very interesting. Well, I think though that everyone here will have takeaways today. And it's also interesting, and no one chose advanced. I think people are sometimes self-conscious, like, I couldn't, there's no way I could possibly be advanced. So I'm guessing some of the people in that mature category would actually be advanced and didn't choose it. But this is a great foundation for the conversation, so I appreciate it. So when you think about moving up that maturity scale and leveraging tools at your disposal to improve service management, right? You decided to make a shift in service management platforms. What were your needs? What were the business needs, or what was your vision for the service management function that required a switch of platforms?
Yeah, so I would say when I took this role, it was about 4 years ago now. I came in and I saw the service management or ITSM tool that the central IT was using, and its set of processes, and it was pre-foundational, let's put it that way, early on the foundational scale. They had a fairly basic ticketing system with a product called Trackit, and they were not differentiating the types of work or the requests that were coming into the IT team. And because of that, there was not really high adoption even within IT, really. So there wasn't consistent use of a ticketing platform for documenting work, okay? And so that meant that largely it was used for escalations, right? The service desk would escalate things, but a lot of requests were flowing, directly to tier 2 teams, via email or whatever. The service desk, itself would go out of band, out of the ticketing system. And so there just wasn't a lot of reliance upon it. And so then, of course, that meant that the management team did not have good visibility or control at all into what the IT team was doing. Then the other thing I would say is that what I saw is that the county as a whole, as I said earlier, counties are conglomerates, okay? And so we have 25 or so departments, and so IT services are delivered in a distributed manner. So we have small IT teams throughout the county, and many of those, or several of those IT teams, really they had their own ticketing systems that were not linked to, the central IT department's ticketing system. And then we have a number of departments who have request management functions, and so they had their own request management system and a variety of them, right? And again, not a common platform, and so we did not have a common ITSM, ESM platform. So both to handle my own goals of increasing the amount of our work that was documented in the ticketing system, and to provide a platform for the entire county, we went searching for a new platform.
So to follow on, right, there's lots of work that goes on across these teams, right? What were some of the key features to providing visibility? You mentioned that leadership didn't necessarily know what IT was up to. What are the key tools you use to improve that visibility? Because I think that's a problem for lots of people in your seat.
Yep. Yeah, so like the different categories of work, obviously they're the core ITSM functions of incidents and service requests and changes and problems, et cetera, and assets, et cetera. But the other thing that we really wanted to try to accomplish was to better manage and control our projects. So we had a fairly mature project management office and set of processes, but the work, the tasks that would be assigned to the staff were being managed in an entirely separate system. And so if you can think about it from a staff member's perspective, they're trying to manage workloads, their workloads up across the ticketing system, the old ticketing system, their email, their individual voicemail, and then a separate project portfolio management system, right? So just for the staff members, it's very difficult for them to have a comprehensive view of what their workload is, and then from a manager's perspective, it's very hard for us to see about resource availability, utilization, who's really overworked, who's underworked, whatever, right? Because we didn't have a comprehensive view of their workload, really. And so hence, that's another reason why we went looking for a comprehensive platform that also included project and portfolio management capabilities.
It's funny. We see a lot of teams who they don't just do service management. They don't just do projects. It's a mix, especially in the infrastructure and operations type teams, right? Where I might be managing changes. I might be part of tier N support, but we're also working on a lot of projects. So providing that single pane of glass has been really, really helpful. In shifting gears a little bit, you talked a little bit about expanding beyond IT and the enterprise service management component, where for that organization to be synchronized, not just IT needs to work efficiently and effectively, but other departments want to work efficiently, effectively, but then they want to collaborate with each other as well. And when you think about different parts, especially a local government agency, almost every single department is a service organization of some sort in the government. So, when you think about the different areas within the organization and all the different types of requests, right? You think about facilities, all of the work orders, the preventative maintenance, human resources has lots of questions about benefits and name changes and any sort of complaints, et cetera. And obviously marketing requests for collateral information. Legal is a big one that we see a lot too, contract reviews, procurement with contract reviews and purchasing. So when you think about going beyond IT, right, can you discuss the different areas that have seen expansion?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've tried to tackle this in two different ways. So the first thing is early on, we actually conducted kind of an envisioning sort of set of workshops. So we invited stakeholders throughout the county and said, okay, let's talk about service delivery and service management and what we would potentially get from procuring an ESM platform and then adopting some new management practices, really. And so that sparked a lot of interest among our various directors, assistant directors who participated in that. And so we've had that was the start, right? And so since then we've had really good uptake. So we've got interest from our human resources department. Certainly some of the workflows you're talking about in terms of like onboarding employees, et cetera. But then also human resources, they have lots of different types of services they provide, and a lot of those services kind of get historically are difficult to manage for them, right? They have very long life cycles. It's only maybe a few people who are managing the process. So to give you an example, job reclassifications, right, or classification studies. In the public world, that's a fairly formal process to do create a new job description, to do a comp survey, et cetera, right? So that's a very in-demand service that HR is providing. They have very limited resources to do it. And it was an area of frustration for the customers out in the rest of the county, right? That departments would complain that, hey, HR, we put in a request via email for a classification study for a set of positions, and we haven't heard from you in months, sometimes much longer. And they had no visibility as to where their requests are, right? And then correspondingly, the director of HR, she didn't have good visibility, because often the requests would just come into email, they're sitting in a staff member's box, and then they're working it in a set of Word documents in their personal drive, and there's no way, if that person goes on leave or there's a job change, it's very difficult to pick up that work and have somebody else work on it. Also very difficult for the supervisor of that team to see how productive their team is. So these are classic service management challenges, right? And so the HR director started, seeing, the possibility with enterprise service management. And so we've developed, request management, forms and reports, et cetera, for HR using Team Dynamics, and it's been very successful. I'll give you one other example that's kind of maybe a little more unique. Our public defender, right? So we have a public defender, and this is California, and so we have laws on the books say that people, ex-offenders should have the right to petition that their cases essentially either be dismissed or scrubbed or erased, if they meet certain criteria. Okay, so that's a fairly complicated process, right? The ex-offender has to make a request of the public defender. The public defender then has to go, essentially interact with the courts, with the district attorney, with probation, right, to check, okay, is this person really eligible to have their records expunged or whatever? And so this was a laborious process for them. And again, they had no kind of consistent way to track these requests from intake through all the various phases until they could dispose of the case. And so this was a terrific opportunity to use Team Dynamics as kind of a workflow system and to develop a process for them within Team Dynamics. So we've gone live with that, and our public defender is the director of the public defender's office is very pleased with the service we're providing to her.
I always find it real fascinating how so many organizations can operate out of email or a basic web form and actually keep track effectively of the work items that have been requested. And I also see a lot of organizations who are outside of IT who basically have given up on a better way. They think, oh gosh, if IT has to build something for me, it's going to take forever, right? And then if I need to make changes, I'm going to need to wait forever for those changes. So, we're just going to keep doing it this way. But what we have seen typically is that once IT stands up service management, and maybe HR has a piece of that, so onboarding, for example, and they see how the workflow works and how the forms can capture information in a flexible way, and how the work items can be named appropriately, that light bulb goes off, and one-to-many departments say, what, is this thing we could adapt to our needs? And what we also find is most non-IT groups don't want to learn how to speak IT. They don't want to use the term incident or problem or change. They want case. They want work order. So can you talk through that evolution at San Joaquin? Who came forward first, or how did you find the first group who to roll out?
Yeah. So it started with that kind of envisioning session where we just basically I sent out a memo and a call to arms, whatever, and said to see, okay, who could I get to come and participate, and then literally we just took the time to brainstorm. We had directors from a variety of departments, and they were all just brainstorming, and then things started gelling. They could see, we have similar problems. The challenges that the public defender was facing was actually similar to what HR is facing, which is actually similar to what GSD is facing. They use different vocabulary, right? But at the end of the day, what's fundamentally happening is that, request comes in, there's some workflow related to the request, there's a team of people who are satisfying that request. There might need to be some approval, workflow that's happening, but at the end of the day, structurally, it's all the same. And perhaps those requests are linked to an asset of some kind, perhaps, but fundamentally they're all the same, and so really the lingo changes, but and the workflow, the unique workflow changes, but that's it,
Yeah,
So,
fundamentally, the mechanism is similar,
yes.
right?
Fundamentally, yes. I think the other thing that's a real enabler of a comprehensive system like this is it enables better management. Really, it enables better management. If you can't measure your service delivery, then it's very difficult to improve it, right? And so enterprise service management and IT service management, you have the ability to instrument and measure your service delivery and then apply, continuous process improvement to improve upon it.
Yeah, I think that we see the cases outside of IT or use scenarios as fairly compelling. If you look at the list here, right, we've talked about a few of these, and often we find that many processes, especially the more individuals or technologies they involve, become very cumbersome for people. Like I'll use onboarding, offboarding as an example. Lots of departments, prone to error, prone to delays, generally frustrating for everyone involved, right? Including the person that you're hiring who wants to start and without a lot of friction. So can you talk to any of these, how you've experienced them, or any other use cases in these other departments that stick out to you where it was a fairly large improvement?
Oh yeah, I'd say another area that was a big improvement was in some of our distributed IT teams. So like we've discussed using team dynamics for some of our distributed teams. So like we have a network of clinics. The county has a hospital and a network of clinics, and the network of clinics has a little IT team, and they just totally adopted very well the ITSM components of Team Dynamics, particularly on the self-service side. So they did an excellent job of enumerating all of the service types, service items that they deliver to their customers, and then did a really fabulous job of developing a self-service portal that exposed those service items, to their users. And the team did it because they were really trying to drive as much self-service as possible, to reduce the amount of, repetitive sort of labor, documentation labor, gather all the correct information they need to fulfill a service item, et cetera. And they were very successful with that. And then the other big advantage of that is that since they're using the same overall enterprise system as central IT, we are able to coordinate much better with them. So their users place a request on their portal, but it actually might be fulfilled by the central IT department, and it's transparent to their end user that's how the request is getting fulfilled.
Yeah, I think as they say, the end user doesn't really care how the sausage gets made, right?
Right.
But that's what we've seen. But you want to make that easier for the people actually doing the work. We have another poll, kind of follow up to enterprise service management, and this is how many groups are using service management solutions? Is it just IT, or do you have other groups? So go ahead and take a second to fill this out. It's funny if I think if we had asked this question 18 months ago, it'd be far different than today. We've seen a massive expansion of enterprise service management over the past, 36 to 24 months for certain. So go ahead and jump in, right? Don't overthink it too much. But how many groups outside of IT are using your service management platform? right, to improve their service. Looks like we have quite a few here. I'm going to guess, I'm not going to put you on the spot, Mark. I'm going to guess B is the biggest cohort. How do you feel about that?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, let's see how we did. Just by a nose, it is
Just
B.
by nose, yeah.
Just by a nose. Look at that. That's good. I love the complexion of this industry because I think more and more departments are benefiting for certain. And if you think about enterprise service management, we talked about, Mark talked about San Joaquin. Here's just a list of common types of non-IT service requests that we see, right? If people have plants and shops, the spills and accident reporting, that was one that was interesting to me when it came out. Anything wrong with facilities, the temperature in rooms, or preparing for events. It's pretty remarkable how people can use these tools to fix a business problem. Now, you mentioned the client portal for the clinics, that they did a good job of building content so that they could self-serve, therefore removing burden from their team. I know your teams have done quite a bit of work on the portal as well. Can you walk through how you've approached self-service?
Sure. Yeah, so we were the first, right? So Central IT started first. And so the first time we took a crack at it, the challenge that we had is we couldn't come to the same, across all the teams within Central IT, we couldn't come to a common understanding of how deep do you go, on a given service item. So some teams were very broad, some teams got super narrow on their service items, and so basically we took a step back and said, okay, we have to start simple to get our users used to doing this. And so let's first just educate them about the fact that there's an incident and then there's a service request. So and the way we phrased it is, are you contacting us because something's truly broken? It was working yesterday and it's not working today, it's truly broken. Or are you just requesting something? And so that was our gateway to start educating the large county, we're talking 10,000 workers, about using self-service, right? And then the clinics has taken it to that next level where they've really detailed out their service requests so that they can go to more self-service. And then the cool thing is that what we're doing is we're basically adopting their self-service portal. We're taking what that little team has done and we're revising it for ourselves to then go to the next generation of what we're going to present to the county, right? That's really cool. And then what we're going to do for the ESM customers is, like you mentioned, our parks department. So our parks department is super excited about using the ESM functionality for everything from requests for the public to either report issues at the parks or to request some things from the parks department, but then also for the asset management, preventive maintenance, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The self-service capabilities also on service management tools have advanced so dramatically in the past couple of years with the advent of AI and combining AI with automation. I think it's an incredibly exciting time to be involved. Now, here's another poll question for everyone. From a self-service perspective, what percentage of your requests are resolved by self-service? That could be answering questions on a portal or through conversational AI or other means, but just give a second to think about what percentage of your requests are resolved through self-service. And I think this is becoming more and more important because I also think, like I mentioned, the tools at our disposal to increase the number or percentage of requests that are resolved via self-service with a high level of satisfaction have improved dramatically. And I think that's what's most exciting about it today, is that I think that vision that we all had for how good self-service could be, 10 years ago we actually are starting to have the tools to make it happen, which is kind of exciting. So let's go ahead and see what the group says. Okay, 1 to 10%. It looks like we have some at the 20 to 30% as well. So I think that is fascinating. You know, what it indicates to me is there's a ton of opportunity here to increase that percentage, which is always exciting when there's a way to improve things. Now, shifting gears, when we think about improving the way service is delivered, when you think of it from the perspective of improving the quality of service, improving the satisfaction of services with your customers, and improving the workload of your teams, automation, especially combined with AI, presents a tremendous opportunity. You know, as you think about all of the toil, that mundane work that IT does, I like to think of it as the types of work where I'm doing nothing but clicking a mouse. I'm not necessarily doing any sort of discovery. It's fairly straightforward. I just need to click something to get something done. We did a survey with Information Week, and what was really fascinating is 58% of the respondents said that their team members are spending between 2 and 3 months a year on these types of activities. What was also interesting is 89% of the same respondents said that that type of work causes attrition, people to leave because they hate it. It doesn't require much gray matter. They're just a mouse jockey. That's fairly staggering. And the other thing that we find is that the customers also don't want to wait on things like that. If it can happen near instantaneously, that's their preference, right? So Mark, can you talk a little bit about automation and integration? And I put this slide up here because I know that your ERP upgrade was a huge central feature of your roadmap. Can you talk about integration automation as it relates to Workday and other things you're doing?
Yeah, so this is a huge opportunity, and we actually did acquire the iPaaS platform specifically because we want to better integrate Team Dynamics with third-party, platforms, really. And so Workday is one of the main targets for that. And really the rationale here is that as central IT, this gets kind of into my putting on my accounting hat, central IT, we're 100% chargeback, right, within county government. So we're not funded, directly by the general fund, we're funded by our clients, right? And we have to recoup our costs from our clients. And so since Workday is our finance system, or soon will be our finance system, we saw this as an opportunity to tightly integrate our ITSM system, where we document all of our work, with our finance system, okay, so that we can better and more transparently capture charges to recoup the expenses for the work we perform. And so what we're doing is we're actually using Team Dynamics as kind of expense management features, right? So that all of the work items that the staff work on in terms of incident service requests, we have a maintenance log type work item when they're just doing maintenance or preventative maintenance work, and then all of their project tasks, right? All of them have an associated, essentially, cost center or service line, right? And so when the staff are working on their ticket and they're adding hours, the ticket itself is ascribed to a service line, okay? And then we're essentially integrating with Workday, sending that information into Workday so that the process of charging the departments on a monthly basis is entirely automated. And the staff members no longer have to try to keep those records themselves and put them into their timesheets and code it all manually. It is just being done in the place where they document their work, which is Team Dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Great. I think that the use cases for those types of efficiency are fairly significant in their scope and scale across most organizations. So if you had the magic wand for automation, what would it be? Think about this for a second. What would it be that you would automate from this list that would save your team time, improve the quality of service, and probably make your customers happier? So that could be onboarding, offboarding, password resets, provisioning software, updating Active Directory groups, permissions, etc. Or maybe you're doing it all, right? Maybe you feel like you're fully automated and optimized, which would be a great place to be. Not very many organizations are there, but I think a few probably are. So let's see what people have to say here. I'll just give you a couple more seconds. Figure this out as we go. Now, Mark, let's say you had no automations. What would have your pick from this list been? What was the most painful or the most, I guess, valuable automation would be? What would it be?
Yeah, for me, it is the on and offboarding employees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is one of the first things our customers automate, those two. And it's funny, onboarding, which I think a lot of people pay a lot of attention to, because obviously the quality experience of somebody starting, I think a lot of research has been done that suggests that that sets the tone for their whole experience with the organization. But the offboarding has such a big risk component that becomes almost more critical. You can kind of choose how you onboard. Offboarding, from a compliance and risk perspective, needs to happen quickly. And I think, let's see, password resets slightly took onboarding, offboarding, but it was a very, very clearly a two-horse race here, which is not surprising. Does this surprise you, Mark?
No.
No, I didn't figure as much. So we've talked about a lot of concepts, from IT service management, enterprise service management, the blending of projects and service management work. We also talked about the power of automation and self-service. So I'm going to bring in one of my colleagues, Kaylee, who leads our solutions engineering team, to take some of these concepts that we've talked about and give you a visual using the Team Dynamics platform. Now, keep in mind, you can think about this in terms of your own tool. Do you have tools that can do this already, right? Maybe give you some new ideas, or if you're searching for a tool, gives you some ideas of things to look for. So Kaylee, with that, I am going to pass it over to you.
Perfect. All right. Well, we will go ahead and, like Andrew said, put some visuals to what we have been talking about. And like Andrew said, as you may be in the search for a tool and some things that you might want to look out for in your search. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and let's take a look here. All right, so as my screen is loading and pulling up here and is going to display, we're going to take a moment to understand, what you would have from an end user perspective and some things that you might want to keep in mind, especially to what we have been talking about with Mark and Andrew. And so when we think about the end user experience, Team Dynamics wants to make sure that you are meeting your end user where they're at. And so to a comment made earlier about, emailing HR in order to place requests and those falling by the wayside, we're able to help support that email to ticket scenario by monitoring an inbox, automatically turning those into tickets. But taking that a step further and expanding it to where, like was mentioned, creating that nice, easy to understand landing area within what we call our client portal. And you have so many configuration options to make this look and feel how you would need to. But what you'll notice is some themes across our customers is their ease of use of being able to create that idea of a one-stop shop, where it doesn't matter, like in the examples we've been talking about, doesn't matter who I am as far as an employee of the county, and it doesn't matter the type of department that I need to go to, being able to go to one place. And so what you'll notice from my unified homepage is that I can even have landing pages that could be dedicated to those specific areas. And so while we have the flexibility to have as many different portals as you see here across a single instance of Team Dynamics, more often than not, for most groups where we're wanting those end users, those employees we support, to have that central location, you can live harmoniously in one place. And like was mentioned before, through things like the service catalog and knowledge base, being able to make sure that they're just getting the information and access levels necessary based on who they are. So when we think about some of the other ways that we really support that end user experience, Andrew had mentioned this a little bit earlier, and it's where we see so many of our customers moving into the end user support area of conversational AI. And so when you're considering tools, things to think about are that future proofing, that scaling of, hey, how do we take those types of mundane requests that come in, whether it be to IT or any of the other types of service-based groups, and not only being able to, like in our tool, crawl across your entire Team Dynamics knowledge base or really any knowledge source that you want us to point to, whether it be websites or wiki pages or documents that you have on a shared folder, and being able to generatively provide those answers based on your documentation. But not just that, the power of integration also is included in our end user support features. So when we were talking about earlier, some of those processes like onboarding, offboarding, being able to ask for pieces of information, like in this case, I'm currently signed in as an employee in my environment. And when I come here, it knows who I am because I'm securely authenticated through SSO. I could ask things like, what is my PTO balance? And in live time, being able to understand securely who I am and integrating with an ERP or an HRIS system to reflect back that information to the user. But it can be extended further when we think about being able to help with that self-service on some of those items without that onus being on the end user to have to figure out where to go in order to place that type of request. And so in this scenario, I might be a user that, can you add me to an AD group? I know at my previous organization, I would get calls to the service desk to say, hey, I need access to this folder. Can you get me access to it? And so being able to give that power a little bit, but with the security and the restraints around it. So when I just selected this top one here, it's letting me know that there's an approval process that I'm going to have to go through. So behind the scenes, what we're doing is automatically generating that ticket for the user, automatically being able to kickstart the workflows like we were just talking about, like when we were discussing the HR workflows, and beginning that process to make sure that everybody needs to know what's going to happen and the automated pieces. So in this scenario, we're going to see this ticket here in just a minute, but automating actually reaching out to Active Directory once we've gotten that proper approval, and then making sure that person gets into that group. Now, when we think about the proactive communication, one of the pieces that we find really important for our customers is that every single out-of-the-box field and custom field is instantly reportable and filterable. So to the point earlier that was being made about, wanting to make sure that you're proactively communicating about the things, like in that scenario that HR is doing. It's not that people are waiting on things to get done, it's that they got a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Is that every single field, like I mentioned, has the ability to be reported on, pulled onto a dashboard, but then also being able to securely share that out across your organization. So anybody at any time can go and see, oh, hey, okay, this is exactly where HR is at with these particular recruitment activities and the processes. And this type of proactive communication extends throughout the entire platform, whether it be the self-service or ticketing type items that you're communicating about, or it being more of the longer term project-based initiatives and allowing those stakeholders quick and easy ways to dig into that information in the project. Now, when we think about the rest of our tool, keep in mind that, of course, we support the full ITIL life cycle and methodologies. And so when it comes to making sure that IT has all of those tools from the incident to problem and change and release management, we've got you covered. When we think about some of those features extending out to other groups, that's where the power of things like our workflow builder, being able to assist with processes like the onboarding, as an example, as you see here, divvying out the tasks across the different teams. That's where you get the power of being able to live harmoniously within one work management solution. And so from this type of view in an IT sort of realm, I'm paying attention to tickets and SLA and metrics. But if in this exact same instance, I hop on over to there to my HR manager and I take a look at their view of the work they have, right? I'm focusing on requests. I'm not worried about incidents, problems, and changes, right? I'm focusing on cases, requests. Versus if I come on over to somebody that might be in a facilities team, I'm paying attention to work orders and also leveraging the same type of rich asset management functionality right alongside for other types of service groups like facilities. Or I've talked to parks and recreation teams that want to be able to track equipment that they loan out to community members, things like that. So lots of flexibility when it comes to supporting the entire enterprise. Now, when we think about that ticket that we just created a moment ago as that end user that was needing to get added to that Active Directory group, behind our powerful integration and conversational AI features, we automatically generated that ticket. We're automatically populating in information to be helpful. We're utilizing tools like our AI summaries to be able to quickly give that recent history generated right there for that IT technician who needs to get a good instant understanding of what's happening. And in this scenario, you'll notice we kickstarted one of those workflows there. And so with this workflow in particular, what you'll notice is that we have that initial approval step. And that's going out to those individuals, asking for them to approve. Once we get that approval, we then kick on over to that advanced automation area, like we were just talking about, to automatically get them added into AD. And once that happens, great. We then close out this ticket, notify everybody that needs to know. And other than needing the end user to submit it, to ask, and somebody to have some security approvals, there isn't a need to have somebody truly touch the ticket. And those resources that would manually be doing it can actually be focused on things that are moving the needle within your operations and in your department. And so the last piece that I want to cover here before passing back so we can cover any questions and things that we have from the audience is, team dynamics and whatever tool you might be in the search for, it's definitely critical to make sure that you are tracking all types of work, whether it's those shorter term initiatives in the ticketing based, whether it's those operational pieces, or it be the longer term project based. And what Team Dynamics aims to provide for you is that single pane of glass across all types of work. And so whether you're tracking things in tickets like you just saw, or using our projects area to track those deep, rich tasks in multiple different methodologies, you're able to create those consolidated views through reporting across your entire area or across the entire portfolio, where you're able to aggregate that data, those resources, the allocations, the information, the metrics, and being able to bring those in to those highest level views within the portfolio that you may have. And so with all of the reporting, like I mentioned, all of that comes out of the box to be able to dig into those details and being able to bring together those unified views. And so with that, we have taken just the surface scratch of what we offer here. So hopefully that was able to give you some visuals to some of those concepts that we have talked about here. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and pass it right on back over to you and Andrew and crew.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kaylee. Really appreciate it. Just to summarize the areas that Kaylee looked at, right? You have your enterprise service management capabilities, your IT service management at the top of that, self-service on the right, your project portfolio management tools. And then there's an AI layer and an automation and integration layer as part of that. We really feel like all of these work together to help your organization or any organization work more effectively. Now, before we get to some questions, we do have a couple upcoming events. So the first is Bridging ITSM Security Gap. This is with an IDC research analyst. That is June 3rd. And then we're also going to be hearing from our VP of Advanced IT Asset Management about saving money with better asset management around software, cloud software, installed software spend. If you want to know more about those, you can visit teamdynamics.com/events. So I think we have time for a few questions. Barry, you've been watching that list, so I'm sure people have lots to ask.
Well, Andrew, Mark, Kaylee, thank you. That's an amazing amount of information and new ways of looking at true enterprise service management and its benefits. We do have some questions from the audience, so let's get started with those. The first question is, Just curious, how is Team Dynamics different from other service management platforms? They mentioned ServiceNow as one. Does this product require dedicated developers to fully utilize the system functionality? So Andrew, maybe you could help us with the part about how it's different than ServiceNow, and
Yeah.
then Mark, maybe you can chime in and help us understand about your development experiences with this.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a great question. So, I think every service management platform has its ideal market fit where it's going to be the best solution for a particular customer, right? And I think ServiceNow, for example, is an excellent platform if you have the budget for 20 plus developers, you have an international business in scope, you have very, very bespoke needs. It's a great platform. Where Team Dynamics really focuses and where we win is we provide the best ratio and combination of enterprise capabilities with ease of ownership. So the idea is it's point, click, and key or no code. And that's really where we fit in the market. So I think we're that best mix of tools to help you mature, right? Combined with a very reasonable cost of ownership, which includes the time and your people invested. So, Mark, why don't you talk a little bit about the administrative requirements?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'll just echo that. That was the primary, one of the main reasons we went with Team Dynamics was we saw that we could support the platform without a lot of dedicated resources. And in fact, our implementation with Team Dynamics was, we did our implementation, right? It was coached by Team Dynamics. Team Dynamics, educated us, et cetera, and coached us, but we did all of the build within the system to deploy our system. So as a steady state, we have one administrator who is part-time, our Team Dynamics administrator. So his other duties include our enterprise document management system administration, and then some other smaller kind of essentially case management type systems that he helps to administrate, right? But it's really half of an FTE who is supporting our Team Dynamics implementation countywide.
That's amazing. A half an FTE for 10,000 workflows for 10,000 people. Do you have, and Mark, I would just ask you as a follow-up question, do you have, you mentioned that you're sort of a decentralized operation and that you have IT groups in your other departments. Do those IT groups maintain their own Team Dynamics workflows and portals and so forth?
Yeah, so in terms of content update, yeah, so we've delegated administration for content update, for example, to our health clinics for the creation of their service items, et cetera. But really, our team and that individual did the initial build, right? They did the classic kind of IT discovery about what are your requirements, what do you want to accomplish? They went some kind of iterative design approach where our analysts showed that team, hey, this is what we've done, this is how we did it. Now, what would you like to see, right? So in terms of you can think of it like a content management system where we've delegated some responsibilities out to other teams to maintain their content, but central IT administrates this platform.
Great. So Andrew, the term you used I really like is ease of ownership.
Yeah.
Right. As a former CIO, I can fully appreciate ease of ownership when it comes to enterprise platforms like this. Okay, let's move on to another audience question here, and it's about no code. I think you used the term no code and integrations here. When you say no code, does that mean we can integrate to anything and at any point in the systems? For instance, deep integrations to multiple tables in Workday without coding? Question mark. So help us understand a little bit more about how exactly you went about the integrations with Workday, Mark, and maybe Andrew, you can speak to the opportunities here. Mark, why don't you lead us off with regards to Workday?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So what we're doing is, obviously, we have purchased and trained up on the iPaaS platform, which allows us to essentially create integrations with third-party products. And on the Workday side, they also have a corresponding integration engine for essentially receiving inbound requests, sending data out. So it's not that you have direct access to the tables within Workday. You are having to use their integration engine, right, to create their side of the interface. But you can effectively have team dynamics. In our case, what we're doing is we're sending labor hours about staff, right? Each staff member is, when they're working their tickets, that's accumulating labor hours against a given service line, and then that information is being sent via this integration to Workday.
I see.
Yeah,
okay. I can put that accountant hat on, right? So Andrew, how about you?
Yeah. So the idea with iPaaS, which stands for Integration and Platform as a Service, that's the automation and integration layer. The idea is that you have a library of connectors, which have a set of actions that can be taken, either producing information or ingesting information, that turns it into drop-down menus, right? So that you can add a connector and then add a process from that connector to another connector, or even back to the same connector via a different action. But the idea is that it's using a framework designed after Blockly and Scratch, which are MIT and Google's frameworks, UX frameworks for teaching children technology logic. So it does require a base understanding of technology and systems, but you don't have to be a software developer to build these integrations. Now, no code on the ticketing and work management and service management side, one of the really important things about that, especially with enterprise service management, is that when a department who's not IT can build their own forms, modify their own workflows, right? Add logic and automation rules without knowing how to code or without being deep system admins, that takes the burden off of IT. And that's an incredibly important point when you're thinking about enterprise service management expansion. I don't know a single IT leader who says, hey, we're really looking for more things to do. I'm just excited to add things to our team's plate. So that's a really, really important component.
So IT is no longer the funnel, right? That everything has to be filtered
Correct.
through. Excellent. Okay, so we've got time for one or two more quick questions, and I guess this is from a department that's looking post, implementation or a customer. Which departments do you usually start with for ESM expansion? So, like, which customer departments would you go to? Mark, where did you go first after you got the base system up and you used it for your help desk? Who was your first customer outside of IT?
Really HR is the group we started working with first, and we took some of the easier things where, like I talked about that classification study, right, where it's a fairly simple workflow itself, but we're just trying to get them, educated about enterprise service management, get them used to using a portal for satisfying a request, giving them the idea of, okay, you can have multiple agents who are receiving an inbound request, but they can manage it as a queue, So we started with HR, but, we also talked to our general services department, our county council. Really, I would encourage folks to do this approach where you throw it out to the organization and you just say, hey, folks, let's learn about service management, right? And talk about our common challenges. And you'll see that yields results.
So don't so much pick the next customer, put it out there and let the customers come to you, find the enterprise needs. Okay, and build quick wins. I also heard you talking about, like, do something simple, get a quick win, build on the success. That's excellent. So Andrew, I think the last question is really for you, and it's a question about, does Team Dynamics offer implementation and consulting services along with the technology to help us start our ITSM modernization? Why don't you take just a few seconds and tell us about that?
Yes, we absolutely do. And the good news is with the platform is the services organization is really teaching our clients how to fish. There are the solutions that aren't very capable that you can put a credit card in, you get no help except your, online videos, et cetera. And then you have the other type of organizations like ServiceNow that require Accenture and Deloitte or big consultants. We have found that the best way to do it is to guide customers against their use cases and teaching them along the way so that they can continue to use our services, but they don't have to, right? That's the goal.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. That's a great place to leave us. And I'm afraid I have to be respectful of our time commitment. I could talk to you guys all day about this, but we need to wrap it up here. In closing, I would just like to thank Mark and Andrew for sharing their insights on today's webcast. And I would also like to thank Team Dynamics for making it possible to have this important webcast discussion today. And thanks to you, our audience, for being with us. And to access a certificate of attendance for this, please click on the certificate widget in the console menu. We look forward to seeing you again at another government technology event. Have a great rest of your day.